Hey guys, before we get into the cards, make sure to subscribe so you can see me use these cards when the expansion releases. So yesterday had the big reveal stream, so there's 60 cards to look over in this video. And we'll start off with Druid. First up, Partner Assignment. A 1-mana spell for Druid. Add a random 2 cost and 3 cost beast to your hand. Most of the beasts that are in standard are pretty good. I mean, there's some low rolls, but you're not looking at anything awful, and this helps you to curve out. So in Spell Druid it could give you an alternative way to curve out if you miss your ramp, and if you have some sort of token Druid build you could have that in, so it's alright. Next, Gibbling. A 1-mana 1/1 minion for Druid with Spell Burst, summon a Gibbling. And the way it works is when you summon it, the second Gibbling or the third or whatever will have Spell Burst as well, so you can chain spells over and over again to keep summoning another 1/1, but I don't know if it's that good because it's just a 1-mana 1/1 and you need to have spells with it to be any good, so it's not that great on turn 1 either. And the other problem is there's only one of them with the active Spell Burst at a time, so the opponent can just kill off the one with Spell Burst and it's not really a threat anymore. It might be alright in Token Druid, we'll see. Twilight Runner is a 5-mana 5/4 beast for Druid with Stealth, and whenever this attacks, draw 2 cards. So this is a solid card by itself. If you get to draw 2 with it, you're really happy because it's not far off vanilla stats, and then the draw 2 really makes it great. But the thing that makes it really good is Guardian Animals, the 7-mana spell that summons two beasts that cost 5 or less from your deck and gives them rush. You get 2 Twilight Runners, you've got 10/8 in rush and drawing 4 cards. I think this is the beast you need to make Guardian Animals a good card, and it will. Next, Teacher's Pet, a 5-mana 4/5 beast for Druid and Hunter with Taunt and Death Rattle, summon a random 3-cost beast. And this is another good card for Guardian Animals, because by itself it's just a decent taunt, and then if you cheat it out with Guardian Animals it's really good, so I can see some sort of Guardian Animals Druid actually being decent. Also, if you remember Shando Wildclaw, that would be decent copying Twilight Runner or Teacher's Pet, or just if you buff them up with the +1/+1. That's also good, so I think Shando Wildclaw definitely sees play now. Next up, Hunter, and we'll start off with Wolpertinger, a 1-mana 1/1 beast with Battlecry. Summon a copy of this. So, obviously very similar to Alley Cat, so, you know, just another 1-mana 2/2 for Highlander Hunter will be good. And if you run in Shando Wildclaw, if you give this +1/+1, both copies, like the one it summons and itself, will have +1/+1, so it makes it a 1-mana 4/4, so this is definitely good in Highlander Hunter. Next, Carry On Studies, a 1-mana spell for Hunter. Discover a Death Rattle minion. Your next one costs 1 less. The pool is just too diluted with a bunch of crappy neutral Death Rattles for you to run this. I think you just run the good Death Rattles in your main deck, like Zigsaw. You don't try and gamble something good off Carrion Studies. It's not worth a card slot. Next up, Overwhelm, 1-mana Hunter spell which deals 2 damage to a minion and deals 1 more for each beast you control. I don't think a wide beast like Beast Hunter will be any good, so I don't think this spell will be any good. You're not going to build a deck just to get some slightly above average removal on minions, so Overwhelm isn't very good. Next up, Crowlusk Bark Stripper, a 4-mana 3/5 beast for Hunter with Spell Burst. Destroy a random enemy minion. Yeah, you could try and get this out with Guardian Animals, but then you have to have another spell on top of it to trigger it, so not that great. And I think the problem with all these beasts in Hunter is maybe you just prefer the dragons anyway. You compare this to Rotnest Drake and you're like, why am I running Crowlusk Bark Stripper? I don't need a spell. Rotnest Drake is completely busted. You just run dragons instead, I think. Next, Bloated Python, a 3-mana 1/2 beast for Hunter with Death Rattle, summon a 4/4 Hapless Handler. So this is the incentive to play Carry On Studies, I guess, but it's not even that good of stats. Like, yeah, it's decent if you get it curved into turn 2, but your only Death Rattle activator in Standard is Terran Gorfiend, so it's not consistent enough. If you had the 3-mana 3/3 that triggered a friendly Death Rattle, turn 1 Carrion Studies, turn 2 Bloated Python, turn 3 Death Rattle activator, that would be decent, but you only have Get Terran Gorfiend, which is a legendary, so I don't think it's consistent enough. Next, Blood Herald, a 5-mana 1/1 for Demon Hunter and Hunter, which, whenever a friendly minion dies while this is in your hand, it gains +1/+1. So, these effects never tend to be good, and I don't think this is any good either. I mean, 5-mana 1/1. Token Demon Hunter isn't very good at the moment, and this card is certainly not going to carry it, so I think this card's pretty shit. Next, Demon Companion. A 1-mana spell for Hunter and Demon Hunter that summons a random Demon Companion, and the tokens from this are a cannon with Animal Companion. You've got a 2/2 taunt, a 2/1 charge, and a 1/2. Your other minions have +1 attack, so all of them are decent bodies, just like Animal Companion. So you put this in Highlander Hunter almost certainly, and maybe you replace Blazing Battle Mage and Tempo Demon Hunter, or you could just cut out some of the more expensive cards and just go really hyper aggressive in that deck. Next class, Demon Hunter. First up, Vile Fiend Trainer, 4-mana 5/4 minion, Outcast, summon 2 1/1 demons. So at the moment, Demon Hunter's lacking good turn 4 plays, like good 4-cost minions. You've got Kane, but ever since that got nerfed down from 5 health to 4 health, it's not just as good to just straight up play on 4, so having a couple of extra plays on turn 4 will be good. Might be a boring card, but it's decent. Next, Double Jump, a 1-mana Demon Hunter spell that draws an Outcast card from your deck. So obviously it's self-synergistic with the card you draw because it'll be on the right side of your hand, so you'll have the Outcast ready. But as like all the Demon Hunter builds aren't really running that many Outcast cards. Like, a lot of them have been cut in I-Beam, and if you're paying an extra card and a mana for it, it's just penance, and then at that point it's not even that good. And then the obvious choice is Skull of Gul'dan, but Skull of Gul'dan at 7 mana and 2 cards isn't exciting. And then I guess you have Glide from the new expansion, but I already think Glide is a bit overrated, to be honest, so I don't think you play Double Jump. Next up, Fell Guardians, a 7-mana Demon Hunter spell that summons 3 1/2 demons with taunt, but it gets reduced in cost by 1 whenever a friendly minion dies. So obviously you compare this to Corridor Creeper. A lot of people thought that would be really bad, but I also think like Fell Guardians is comparable to post-nerf Corridor Creeper when it was a 2/5, because it's a similar amount of stats, and it's also 7 mana. It might even be worse than Corridor Creeper because it's only friendly minions, so maybe this isn't even that good, but I don't want to say that for certain because of Corridor Creeper. On to the next class, we've got Warlock. First up, Demonic Studies, a 1-mana spell for Warlock which discovers a demon and reduces the cost of the next one you play by 1. So, I don't know, just play the good demons instead of gambling. There's so many crappy neutrals in neutral demons in, so just play your Flame Imp, just play your Void Walker. You don't need to gamble away getting like a Vile Fiend or the guy that summons 1/1s for both players. Just play the good cards. Next, Raise Dead, a 0-mana spell for Warlock and Priest, which deals 3 damage to a hero and then returns 2 friendly minions that died this game to your hand. So, draw 2 for 0 mana definitely looks good. I think in Zoo you get a lot of cheap refill, and the problem is in Priest, like yeah, it's good value, but you're already playing Thought Steal. you're already playing Madame Azor, and you're already playing Galacrond. If you just hit the button every turn you can with Galacrond, you've got enough value without having to play Raised Death, so I think you just put it in Zoo Warlock, to be honest. Next up, Priest. We'll start off with Power Word Feast, a 2-mana spell for Priest, which gives a minion +2/+2, and then restores it to full health at the end of this turn. I'm very glad that Northshire Cleric isn't in standard with this, because you'd have a 3/5 and draw a card with it. But with the Frazzle Freshmet, this is the buff that Tempo Priest needs to be good. Frazzle Freshman turn 1, turn 2 follow up with Power Word Feast. You've got a 3/6 to trade into something, and then even if it takes damage in the trades, I don't know, say they have a 2/3 or a 3/2, it doesn't matter because it just gets healed back up. So this is the way that Tempo Priest is actually good, and I'm not looking forward to when they are Frazzled Freshman with Power Word Feast. Next, Draconic Studies, a 1-mana spell for Priest which discovers a dragon and reduces the cost of your next one by 1. I don't know, it's the same as most of the other studies, just play the good dragon like Morazond and I don't know, Onk's Mage Scribe, I guess. I just don't think it's good enough to fill up a slot. Next, Initiation, a 6-mana priest spell which deals 4 damage to a minion. If it dies, summon a new copy. So it's like Holy Water, but actually good. You pay 1 more mana, but instead of having it in your hand, you summon it. So I think this goes into Highlander because Galacrond already, like the duplicate running version of Galacrond, already has enough removal with double penance, double Shadow Word Death, and double Time Rip. But in Highlander, you definitely have room to put Initiation in as a pseudo mind control. Even in aggressive matchups, you still have something decent to take, like a Glaive-bound Adept lines up pretty nicely into this. Next, Mindrender Elucia, a 2-mana 1/3 legendary minion for Priest. Battlecry, swap hands and decks with your opponent until your next turn. Got to love how Blizzard prints out a bunch of combo support, and then they also print out the combo disruption. I guess it's only fair, but it's definitely not fun for the combo side. And also pretty notable, in Wild, Reno Priest is definitely going to be tier 1. Well, it already is, but it's going to be dominating because basically the only deck that hard counters Reno Priest at the moment is Quest Mage, the one that takes an extra turn. But if you Mind Render the Time Warp spell, you then steal the extra turn and you win. So I don't know. I'm sure people in Wild will absolutely love this card. Next, Wave of Apathy, a 1-mana spell for Paladin and Priest. Set the attack of all enemy minions to 1 until your next turn. So if you remember Cabal Acolyte, the 4-mana 2/6 taunt with Spell Burst, take control of a random enemy minion with 2 or less attack. So that's a great combo. You don't really want to be running Lazul's Scheme, you'd rather run Wave of Apathy because by itself it's like a pseudo Frost Nova, so it's kind of decent by itself, whereas Lazul's Scheme is crap by itself. But maybe you're not got enough card draw to support this in Priest, but we'll see. And then in Paladin, it's also just not really good enough. You can't really afford to put it in without anything to combo it with, and Paladin doesn't have anything to combo it with, so not good enough in Pally. On to the next class, Paladin. We'll start off with Blessing of Authority, a 5-mana spell that gives a minion +8/+8, but it can't attack heroes this turn. So obviously that drawback makes it a bit counterintuitive for a buff, because the reason you play buffs is because they basically have charge if you already have a minion in play, because you have something in play, give it +4/+4, you basically have those stats as charge. But this is a lot of stats. Like, if you pull it from High Abbess Elora's Spell Burst, you basically ignore the downside, and that's a massive minion, so I think that's good with that. And then if you put it on like a Devout Pupil after it's been discounted a bit, it's got Taunt, so the buff still matters because they have to get through that Taunt, so that's also good. So I think it's just too many stats to not be good. Next, Judicious Junior, a 6 mana 4/9 paladin minion with lifesteal. Pretty boring and pretty bad. Your opponent can just hard remove it with some spell or like a Rotnest Drake or a flick, and then you don't get any heal from it. I guess if they do ignore it, you can buff it up, but without something like Taunt or Rush, I don't see it seeing play. Next, Commencement, a 7 mana spell for Paladin and Warrior that summons a minion from your deck and gives it Taunt and Divine Shield, so you were obviously meant to put it in Dual Paladin, but that's already a pretty memey deck, and then this costs 2 mana more to pull a minion. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. And then I guess Big Warrior, but did anyone ever play Gather Your Party, the 6 mana recruiter minion? No, so would you really pay 1 mana more just for Divine Shield Taunt? I don't think so. You just can't afford to not have any early game minions at all in either of the classes, or in any class really for that matter. Next, Shield of Honor, a 1 mana Paladin and Warrior spell. Give a damage minion +3 attack and Divine Shield. So it's pretty awkward in Paladin because it's not that easy to get a minion damaged, but in a Warrior rather, you've got Risky Skipper and Inner Rage, so you get your egg buffed up, or you get your Tolvir buffed up or whatever, and then later in the game you have Corcoran Elite, you Inner Rage it, you Shield of Honor it, you Bloodsworn Mercenary it, you Rampage it, you're getting up to 20 plus damage into a combo. I think this could go into Enrage Warrior certainly. Next up, Warrior, and we'll start with Reaper's Scythe, a 4 mana 4/2 weapon with Spell Burst, also damages adjacent minions this turn. I think the problem with this is not that it's it's not a bad card by itself, but the alternatives are just better. You can't really replace Ankar or Liveway Alliance because Corsair Cache is a way smoother to curve into a 3-cost weapon, and the Pirate synergy to get your Risky Skipper and the Lackeys to get extra Lackeys to fuel your Risky Skipper turns. I just don't think you can swap out into Reaper's Scythe. Then if you're running Bomb Warrior, well, you need the Wrench Caliber because it's Bomb Warrior. I think this card has a lot of potential in the future though, so watch out for it. Next, Athletic Studies, a 1 mana Warrior spell. Discover a Rush minion, your next one costs 1 less. And sensing a theme with these study cards, just run the card you want in your deck instead. Like, the only Rush minion you're playing at the moment is Blood Boil Brute, and I don't think that really needs any help getting its cost reduced, to be honest. Next, In Formation, a 2 mana Warrior spell. Add 2 random Taunt minions to your hand. I think this is too slow and has too much variance on the quality of Taunt minions at the moment, so just too many crappy neutrals for this to be decent. Next, Cutting Class, a 5 mana spell for Warrior and Rogue. Draw 2 cards, cost 1 less per attack of your weapon. This is such a shame that they didn't go with Warrior Paladin on this one, because Paladin is in desperate need of some decent card draw. Like, Warrior isn't lacking it, they've got Battle Rage, and then Rogue has enough cards with the Lackey generation from Galakron, as well as Galakron itself, and then the stealth package of Skyvatir and Greyheart Sage, so I don't think you run this because both classes just already have enough card draw. Next, Coerce, a 3 mana Warrior and Rogue spell. Destroy a damage minion, combo, destroy any minion. Warrior doesn't run Execute, and since they're all like Enrage builds with Risky Skipper, you'd run Execute over Coerce, and you don't run it anyway, so who cares? And then Rogue, you'd probably just run Sap, because it's basically just 2 mana to kill anything, and well, it doesn't run that either, you just run the secret Blackjack Stunner guy instead, so neither class needs this at the moment, but I suppose it could see play in the future. Now, onto Rogue. We'll start with Shifty Sophomore, a 4 mana 4/4 minion with Stealth and Spell Burst. Add a combo card to your hand. Understated 4-drop with only a minor upside. It's probably just pack filler, to be honest. Next, Vulpera Toxin Blade, a 3 mana 3/3 minion. Your weapon has +2 attack. No one's running Deadly Poison, so I don't think you run this either. I think the problem with Rogue is, even if they've got loads of like weapon buffs and weapon synergy stuff, they just don't have that Corsair Cash equivalent or Raiding Party which they had in the past to make it consistent enough, because you need to draw the weapon, not just all the stuff that buffs it up, so it's kind of a shame. Next, Self-Sharpening Sword, a 3-mana 1/4 weapon for Rogue. After your hero attacks, gain +1 attack. So the problem with it is it's really slow to start with, and once again, you need a weapon tutor before any sort of weapon sees play in Rogue, I think. Oh well, and you might also just need Galakron to go away, because every single Rogue deck seems to play Galakron. Next, Plagiarize, a 2-mana Rogue secret. At the end of your opponent's turn, add copies of the cards they played to your hand. So, on one hand, Dirty Tricks is better because it's guaranteed 2 cards that are good because you put them in your deck, but on the other hand, if you're like later into the game, Plagiarize tends to be better because your opponent's likely to play at least 2 cards and often more, so maybe you run 1 Dirty Tricks and 1 Plagiarize. I could see that happening. Now, on to Mage. We'll start with Wormweaver. 5-mana 3/6 minion with Spell Burst, summon 2 1/3 mana worms. I could see this with Frost Nova being pretty scary, because you freeze off your opponent's board, next turn you go in with your Sorcerer's Apprentice and Mana Cyclone whatever. Mana worms keep getting buffed up, hit them in the face, they die. So, good finisher in Cyclone Mage most likely. Next, Firebrand. 3-mana 3/4 minion for Mage. Spell Burst, deal 4 damage randomly split among all enemy minions. So, it's just vanilla stats with upside. You play this in Cyclone Mage. Might not be as good as Flame Waker, but it's still decent enough to play at, so. Next, Cram Session, a 2-mana mage spell that draws 1 card, which is improved by spell damage. So, this is even more Cyclone Mage support. Lab Partner on turn 1 becomes even better now that you can Cram Session on turn 2. And then, if you're playing Mizaki, you play a bunch of spells, you don't even need the Cyclone, you can just play Cram Session instead, and if your Mizaki's boosted up massively, you draw 3, 4, 5, whatever, a lot of cards. I think Cram Session's pretty decent. Next, Trick Totem, a 2-mana 0/3 totem for both Mage and Shaman. At the end of your turn, cast a random spell that costs 3 or less. And this is really inconsistent, which I'm glad. I'm glad it's bad, to be honest, because it would be infuriating if it was good. Because the reason it's inconsistent is there's 256 spells it could cast in Standard, and, well, it could just Shadow Word Pain itself. I mean, Mage definitely doesn't play this. It's not got any totem support, but Shaman does have Totemic Reflection, but I think you'd rather just have Evil Totem because you know that's good for you every time. I mean, unless you're an RNG god and you roll Totemic Reflection every time, Trick Totem isn't great. And on to the last class, Shaman. We start off with yet another board clear. Tidal Wave, 8-mana spell for Shaman. Lifesteal, deal 3 damage to all minions. We're gonna be rich. If you can survive to turn 8, you probably heal out of your way to beat aggressive decks, and then if you're super greedy, turn 10, Moarg Artificer, you're certainly going back to full health. I think the problem with a control Shaman at the way is you need a way to counter pressure. It's no good just healing back up against some decks. Like that might work against Murloc, Paladin, and maybe Demon Hunter, but if you're playing against Warrior, they'll probably just Grommash you or Corkron you to death, regardless of your massive amounts of AoEs. Shaman really needs another sort of win condition like Shudderwock had before you can play a good control Shaman. Next, Rune Dagger. 2-mana 1/3 weapon. After your hero attacks, gain spell damage +1 this turn. So, this might make Raz Frostwhisper good enough because it guarantees a consecration, because unless they have weapon destruction, you can just poke something, like poke face, and then boom, consecration with Raz Frostwhisper every turn. And then, the other way you could play it you just send Lava Burst face and Lightning Bolts face, and then if you do Rune Dagger first, gets you to squeeze a bit more damage into that deck. And lastly for the class cards, Molten Blast, 3 mana Shaman spell, deal 2 damage, summon that many 1/1 elementals, so it works really well with spell damage, like Rune Dagger for example. You compare this to Implosion, there's no RNG, it's like meh without spell damage, but if you've got Rune Dagger, it's great. It's 3 mana Flanking Strike. You play this if you're playing a spell power Shaman. And now, onto the neutrals. We'll start with Intrepid Initiate, a 1 mana 1/2 with Spell Burst, gain +2 attack. So I think the most likely home for this is in Tempo Demon Hunter, because you've got Twin Slice and Chaos Strike, but maybe even more suitable is a Tempo Priest, because you run in a lot of buffs. Like if you play Powered Shield on this turn 1 mana 3/4, that's really good. It definitely sees play somewhere. Next, Sneaky Delinquent, 2 mana 3/1 with Stealth, Death Rattle, add a 3/1 Ghost with Stealth to your hand. Rogue gets this for 1 mana, you don't play this. Next, Wand Maker, 2 mana 2/2 minion, Battle Cry, add a 1-cost spell from your class to your hand. So, Demon Hunter maybe because it's 1 cost a god, but it's also just a 2 mana 2/2, so I don't think you play this. No one plays the 5 mana 3/5 dragon that does a similar thing, so not very good. Next up, Enchanted Cauldron, a 3 mana 1/6 minion with Spell Burst, cast a random spell of the same cost. It might be sticky enough to survive a turn, sure, but no one plays Fist of Ra'dan, so this is probably bad as well. Next, Divine Rager, a 4 mana 5/1 elemental with Divine Shield. Pack filler. You look at Goddy 2 shields and you're like, wow, this is really bad. Next, Fishy Flyer, a 4 mana 4/3 Murloc with Rush, Death Rattle, and a 4/3 Ghost with Rush to your hand. The Ghost is also a Murloc, so I think you've got better Murlocs. You'd probably rather play Felfin Navigator, but you will still see this from random generation from like the Underbelly Angling Rod, so it's not completely irrelevant at least. Next, Ogremancer, a 5 mana 3/7 minion. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, summon a 2/2 skeleton with Taunt. This is pack filler. I mean, it doesn't even have good stats for the cost. Next, Smug Senior, a 6 mana 5/7 Taunt with Death Rattle. Add a 5/7 Ghost with Taunt to your hand. It's pack filler. It's just a random ass Taunt. You've got better options in most of the classes, and you've also just got like better options in neutral, like Bone Wraith basically. It's the only good neutral Taunt at the moment. Next, Lake Thrasher, a 5 mana 4/6 beast that also damages the minions next to whomever this attacks. So this is another slot to fill in for your Guardian Animals deck. If you give it Rush, the cleave effect is pretty good, so you probably put Lake Thrasher in. Next, Desk Imp, a 0 mana 1/1 demon with no text. It's just a wisp, it's not good. Next, Crimson Hothead, a 4 mana 3/6 dragon with Spell Burst, gain +1 attack and Taunt. I think Bone Wraith is the better neutral option because you don't need a spell and it's stickier, so I don't see Crimson Hothead being that good. Next up, Plagued Proto Drake, an 8 mana 8/8 dragon. Death Rattle, summon a random 7-cost minion. If something costs 6 or more mana and does nothing the turn you play it, it's probably bad. Even if this is 15/15 in stats, it's just too slow. It's the same sort of thing that happened with the 8 mana 7/7 that summoned 7 1/1s. It's just Violet Worm, it's just not good enough in standard. Next, Robes of Protection, a 3 mana 2/4 minion with your minions can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. It's pretty annoying, but fortunately it's a 3 mana 2/4, so you probably don't end up running it. Next, Animated Broomstick, a 1 mana 1/1 minion with Rush, and Battle Cry give your other minions Rush. Some people really think this is insane, but I don't know. It's a 1-drop you don't want to play on 1, and like the only good orc merchant is the one that gives Divine Shield. The rush one, the rocket orc merchant, is bad, so I'm pretty sure animated broomstick is bad as well. Next, Tour Guide, a 1-mana 1/1 with Battle Cry. Your next hero power costs 0. So this is good in Paladin and Shaman just to get 2 tokens out at the start, or like 2 small minions. And it's probably also good in Warlock as just a slightly worse version of Kobold Librarian. Then in Wild, with Odd Paladin, it's definitely very good. Next, Steward of Scrolls, a 5-mana 4/4 elemental with spell damage +1 and Battle Cry, discover a spell. So, very similar to Azure Drake, but I don't know, it doesn't seem that good. And I'd argue that Big Old Whelp is probably just better as a neutral card draw option. Next, Voracious Reader, a 2-mana 1/3 minion. At the end of your turn, draw until you have 3 cards. So it's a 2-mana Jeeves that only benefits you and not your opponent. This is definitely a good option in aggro decks like Murloc Paladin because they don't really have much other choices, so I think that slots in there quite nicely. Next, Mana Feeder Panthara, a 2-mana 2/3 beast. Battle Cry, if you've used your hero power this turn, draw a card. So I think this is most effective with Demon Hunter because they have the 1-mana hero power, so you might end up playing it in there, but probably not anything else because then it's just a 4-mana 2/3 that draws a card as well as whatever your hero power is. And finally, Sorceress Substitute, a 6-mana 6/6 Battle Cry. If you have spell damage, summon a copy of this. So this is your big payoff if you're playing a spell damage deck. So you look at the Shaman cards earlier, it could be pretty good with them. And then Mage also has some potential with it. Lab Partner is a really cheap activate for this if you don't have something on board already. So I think a 6-mana 12/12 might be good enough to make a spell damage deck actually decent. Well, that's all the cards. I'll have all the other reviews linked in the description if you want to check out the rest of the set. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and comment if you disagree with me on any of the 60 cards.